Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. In this conversation, we're going to have a chat about belonging and loneliness. But before we get into that, I need to say that this podcast contains content relating to the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time for you to move on. But if you're down for what's going to be a soul nourishing and beautiful, if a little challenging chat, then how about you go and get us a table and have a quick chat to Mike, and I'll go get the coffee sorted. I'll see you in a tick. Hello, YouTube. How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for joining on YouTube. And right now, those who are listening on the podcast will be hearing a message from my friend Mike Campbell, who runs a program for men, helping men become who they are and be them in the world. It's for all men, wherever you sit on the rainbow spectrum. And it's fantastic. I can vouch for it. I actually work on it, and I did the program a few years ago. He's awesome. Check him out. Check out his work, mikecampbell.com.au. Just if you're ready to get life back, and if you want to do a little bit of work with me and other awesome coaches as part of his program, reach out to me. Let me know. Ask me a question. All right, you ready for this conversation? I am. Let's do it. Okay, here you go. Now, if this is the first time that you've joined me for Connection Over Coffee, welcome. You've picked a brilliant episode to start listening to, or watching if you're on YouTube, and listening if you're listening to a podcast. And this conversation, all about belonging and loneliness, pretty much goes straight to the core of why I feel many of us feel lonely, even when we are surrounded by people. And I know this because it was a large part of my loneliness story. But before we get into the rest of this episode, I just need to finish the welcomes, and that content relating to loneliness is not generally something that any of us go looking for on social media. And we generally only find things when we've been looking for them. So, well, I know that that's the case with many of you. You've come here to this episode and have pressed play because you feel that you might possibly, just maybe, be lonely, and you're looking for something to help you through or fix those very uncomfortable thoughts and feelings of loneliness. Welcome. Welcome. So if you're a return listener, return viewer, or this is your first time having coffee with me, either way, a huge welcome. It is brilliant to have you here because loneliness sucks and it has such stigma. We don't have the words within us to express it. So we think that we're the only person who has ever thought and who is currently working through the really shit thoughts and feelings of loneliness. Absolutely not true. It's a human emotion, and just like we all get happy, just like we all experience joy, just like we all get hungry and we all get thirsty, we all get lonely from time to time. And the way to work through our loneliness is to actually talk about it and start saying that we need the type of connection that we need as individuals, and incorporating that into our lives. This is the place where we have those kind of conversations, and you've joined me for episode 34 of Connection Over Coffee with the Loneliness Guy. Big deep breath, because this episode, as I said, about belonging and loneliness, I'm going to be sharing some of my loneliness story with you. And still, after many years of working on loneliness and sharing my story with people, either one-on-one mentoring or through my blog, through a book that I've written over for the lonelydiplomat.com, my other site, which has a blog and a podcast for diplomats and those who live a diplomatic life. So that's their friends, their families, all about basically centered on my experience of loneliness. And even after doing all of that for 3 years now, for over 3 years, these kind of conversations still are, they're tough. They're tough. They're coming from a very, like, they're coming from me. They're coming from me. And this is not something that I really want to get ever to a place where I can kind of recite my story by rote, because then that kind of comes from my head. What you're about to hear in the story, and honestly, the not reluctance, but well, let's go with reluctance. The reluctance to actually share it. This is something that's really personal to me, and I share it because I know that I'm not alone. I know that so many of you are actually going through this right now, and I want to share my experience with belonging and the feeling of not belonging and how it links to my loneliness. And it links to loneliness, well, it's kind of inseparable in my experience. So there's different types of loneliness, of course, and how we arrive at loneliness is as varied as there are individuals listening and well, around the world. And we can get to those thoughts and feelings of loneliness because of grief. So whether we've lost someone important, or through their death, or through a breakup, we can experience loneliness. And then there's another kind of slow burn loneliness. And this kind of slow burn loneliness is well, this is the one that has the stigma around it, because this is the one that goes to us feeling like we are a failed human. And this loneliness is the one where we feel so disconnected from those around us, from our communities, and indeed from ourselves, that we really can struggle with. And we might not actually identify the thoughts and feelings that come from that isolation as loneliness, because we feel that loneliness is something that, you know, is only when we're old, or it's only when we are grieving loss. But loneliness doesn't really discriminate. It doesn't really care. And as humans, we all feel it. And it's time to unpick why we can feel that, especially that notion, as I said, that we can feel so lonely and isolated, and that nobody understands us, nobody hears us, nobody sees us when we're in a crowd of people. Or otherwise surrounded by other people. And this is perhaps, you know, this is a really tough kind of loneliness. And I'm going to say that you're experiencing this too. And the answer to all of this is down to belonging and feeling that we belong. So all humans, you would have heard me say this repeatedly, all humans need to feel seen. We need to feel heard. We need to feel that we belong if we are to feel connection. And where we don't feel seen, where we don't feel heard, and we don't feel that we belong, we will hustle. We will hustle to feel seen. We will hustle to be heard. We will hustle to feel that we belong, even to the point of doing something that ultimately does not serve us. And belonging goes straight to that point of doing something that doesn't serve us. So this is where my story comes in. And I shared a lot of my story in the blog post that corresponds with this podcast called Belonging and Loneliness. And I published it on I think it was the 17th or 18th of November in 2021. So in any case, have a look at the episode description on the attached to this episode and go and read it, because for the longest time I knew how that, that the belonging and loneliness really was connected. Lots of literature written by smart people and conversations that I have with smart people bear this out. But I didn't know how to start the conversation with an entree. And I thought the best way to do it, was to kind of let it percolate within me. And then a few months ago, when I moved back to Australia from New Zealand, I was going through some boxes, and some of the boxes had photos in it, and so many photos everywhere of school and university and sort of me in my 20s and things. And I was going through packets and packets of photos. And there was one photo that made me kind of stop in my I want to say scrolling, but sifting through the hundreds of photos. And it was a photo of me. And the photo is in the blog post. And it's a photo that is of me having just swum a race for my residential college at Melbourne Uni. And I was standing on the pool deck, and a friend had my camera and took a photo of me. And it's, not the best photo, but it's me in, as a 19-year-old, and I'm in my Speedos after just having swum a race. So I'm dripping wet. I have a smile on my face. I look absolutely relieved. I look very shattered. And first of all, I looked at that photo, I'm like, oh, wow, I was fit. And when I saw that, I'm like, hang on, I did not think I was fit. I thought that I was scrawny and fat, and was and I was, at that moment, I was sucked in to the mind and soul of me as a 19-year-old. And kind of, if this was a movie, I would have been sucked into the photo. And it was an uncomfortable place to be, because as me in my sort of early to mid 40s at the moment, I went back into myself as a 19-year-old, and it was a very sad place. I so desperately wanted to fit in. I so desperately wanted to feel that I belonged. I desperately wanted to be seen, and I desperately wanted to be heard, and I desperately wanted to feel that I belonged, but I was scared. I was such a scared person. I was a scared man. And in many ways, a scared boy, because I suspected that I was gay, and had suspected that I was gay when I started to kind of feel a bit funny around other boys when I was 14. And I went to a boarding school, a Catholic boarding school in regional Victoria. And the boarding part, the school part, the day school, was co-ed, but the boarding part was all boys. And so this wasn't a safe place to feel funny around other boys. And I just remember wanting to continually always editing myself to fit in so I wouldn't be picked on. And when I was 14, I was bullied. I was bullied mercilessly because I was not athletic and I was academic. And I used words that other kids didn't use. And I, had interests that not many other kids had. Certainly it didn't extend to Australian rules football, which, apart from Catholicism, was the dominant religion at that school. And so I like using my words there, I felt that I needed to edit myself and hide the parts away that would attract ridicule and judgment, hide them away, deny them, and only show the best in inverted commas of myself. You're probably nodding a lot there because we all do this. We all do this in our teenage years, and particularly if we are somewhere on the rainbow spectrum and feel that where we are is not a safe space to be who we are. So we hustle. We hustle to prove that we're worthy. We hustle to distract and divert attention. We hustle. We can be really mean and nasty to the other kids who we suspect are, struggling with their sexuality or working out their sexuality, or even yet okay with their sexuality. So we hustle to show that we're not like that. And so we can be nasty, we can bully, or we could become like hyper sporty, or we could become sort of whatever it is in that whole editing process. And I know that you're nodding here because you would have done this yourself in your teenage years. And then all the way through, I share this, go into greater detail in my in that blog post, as I say, but the hustle became my MO. It became my standard operating procedure. And when I wasn't hustling at school, I then hustled at university. I hustled to be, popular. I hustled to have friends and keep friends, because on many instances I remember being told this, and this still causes pain. This still causes pain, that I wasn't like the other boys. And my mind, or I wasn't like everyone else, not necessarily like the other boys, but I wasn't like everyone else. And in my mind, that turned into I wasn't enough. I was lacking. So I doubled down on the bits that I thought would make me acceptable. And so I became the nice guy. I always had a nice word to say to someone and was always there to help someone out. And I made connections like that. And so I thought, oh, this is actually how you do it. You put yourself out there. You the nice guy. You volunteer for everything. And so that's how you make friends. And yes, I did make friends, but the hustle was never enough. And I just kept on hustling and hustling and hustling and hustling for that kind of, to feel connected, to feel seen, and to feel heard. And then I noticed around me at about 18, 19, so the time of the photo, that all these sporty guys, and if in the US we'd probably call them jocks, they were the ones who were always popular. They were the ones who always had, never had to struggle. They were always the ones invited to whatever was going on. And so I thought, right, that's how I get popular. I need to work out. So I started going to the gym. I started swimming. I started doing all this stuff. And, it obviously had health benefits, like, living an active life is good. But, I was never strong enough. I was never buff enough. I was never ripped enough. I was never attractive enough. And so there was always something more because, I would put on 5 kilos of muscle or something like that, or walk in front of hundreds of people at a swimming competition in my Speedos, and, still feel that I wasn't enough, that, another guy next to me who, I thought was attractive or something like that and was bigger and all that. So I had to be like him and had to work harder. And I was just in this spiral of never being enough, never being worthy, never feeling that I belonged. And indeed, so many instances where that I can point to where friends were having parties and there might be 20 people invited, but I was always the 21st. I was never, it felt like that I was always just on the cusp of so many friendship groups, friends with so many people, but friends with no one. And this plagued me. It plagued me for years and years and years and years. And then I realized as I got to 40 that I was lonely, and then got help through Mike Campbell and the ad. I did his program, and indeed I work on his program in the ad that you heard while I was getting coffee. And that hustle suddenly began to make sense. I did not believe that I was worthy of love and belonging. Dramatic pause there, because that's a big statement. And so, dear listener, and so viewer on YouTube, I have a question for you. Knowing that so many of us hustle, so many of us have hustled, and so many of us are hustling to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel that we belong. My friend, do you really honestly feel that you are worthy of love and belonging right now, just as you are? We'll be right back. That's intense, isn't it? Okay, so I do have an ad. We'll have an ad playing in the episode, talking about how I am growing the loneliness guy, wanting to grow the loneliness guy, to do a whole heap of things. But the aim, my vision for the loneliness guy, is for the loneliness guy to be the place on the internet where gay men experiencing loneliness can come get information and support that they need when they need it, wherever they are in the world. My bold vision includes hosting webinars, seminars, and retreats for gay men experiencing loneliness, people like you, men like you, to help you and other men through their loneliness and to learn from their loneliness. The issue is that this requires time and finance to get started, neither of which I have. But with your help, I can then, with your financial help, I can then get some time to start doing what I need to do here in Canberra before growing it around the world. I'm so excited to do this. Cannot wait to do this. This is what I feel absolutely passionate about. And I know that it is needed because you're here. You're telling me that this is needed and that this helps you. But it's time to grow this work, and it's time to get really serious about loneliness in gay communities. But I need your help. If you can, I would really appreciate it if you could go to the link in the episode description on this video. So it's thelonelinessguy.com/invest. Read some more details, and there's a PayPal link that you can go to and then offer your financial contribution. Whatever you can afford will be put to very hard work, making this vision of mine a reality. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Rest of the show? Like rest of the episode. Welcome back. How did you go? That's a big question, isn't it? It's a big question. And I remember when going through that program with Mike Campbell, that my answer made me really uncomfortable, because in my mind, I knew that I was worthy. I knew that I was worthy of love and belonging, because we all are all worthy. But in my heart, in my soul, I knew that I wasn't. I did not feel worthy. And that was it was upsetting. It's upsetting. And this is the crux of loneliness. This goes to the feeling, as I say, of being a failed human, that we're not worthy. We allow ourselves to believe, when we sit in our loneliness, we allow ourselves to believe as a truth about ourselves that we are unworthy of love and unworthy of belonging, just as we are in that moment. Isn't that powerful? And so if you're currently feeling uncomfortable, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that you're feeling that way, because I know that those thoughts and feelings are they're horrendous, they're shit. And we can spend so much of our time like avoiding those, wanting them to, numbing them, making them go away. But those thoughts and feelings are just going to sit there until we work it out. And so I'm sorry that you're feeling that way, but I'm not sorry that you're feeling that way at all. Because right now you have a choice. You have a choice to start doing something that helps you feel that you belong. Now, here at The Loneliness Guy, and you'll see this on my logo, I say that connection has 3 pillars. And the first pillar is connection to self. The second is connection to those most important to you. And the third is connection to communities. Now, if we go to connection, talking about connection, our minds can go to connecting with those most important to us, our friends, our families, our partner, our husbands, whatever it is, whoever they are, and to our communities. But belonging, feeling that you belong, feeling that you are worthy of love and belonging, starts with self. And as part of my loneliness story, I was starting to become aware, and I think this is called confirmation bias. And so, when you go, looking to buy a car and it's a red car, and all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere. This happens all the time, and it's confirmation bias. And for me, when it comes to love and belonging, there was one pivotal moment, and I shared this in the blog post. And it was related to a quote that I read from Dr. Maya Angelou. And this came from the opening chapter of Braving the Wilderness by my intellectual crush, Dr. Brené Brown. And in that opening chapter, Dr. Brown writes about her relationship with this quote and her reckoning with the feeling of belonging exemplified through this quote. Now, I'm going to read this very slowly, so you might want to grab a pen or some way to remember it, but it's also in the blog post. And it's going to be on social media through this week as a post. But this is a powerful quote, and this changed me. And it was first said by Dr. Maya Angelou back in the 70s in an interview that she gave on television. And the quote is, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high and the reward is great." Now, when I first read this back in 2017, I'd yet to come out. And I read this, and this was like the final signal from the universe that I needed to belong to me. And that by knowing that I belonged to me, I belonged everywhere, but I belonged nowhere. And that's okay, because I belong to me. And the reward is high and the price is great. And the price, a few days later, was me coming out to my then wife and knowing no matter how she responded, no matter what happened after I uttered those words that changed both of our lives and our children's lives, that whatever happened after I said that, I belonged to me. And those words, I continue to find courage and absolute inspiration to remind myself that I am worthy of love and belonging just as I am right now. My friend, you are worthy of love and belonging just as you are right now. So you might be feeling like a broken human, like a failed human, and unworthy of love and belonging right now. You might feel that you will be worthy of love and belonging when you lose 2 kilos, 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 15, 20, 25 kilos, or, percentages of body fat, or earn a certain amount of money each year, or achieve something, or bench press 100 kilos, or whatever it is. Underlying all of this is the truth, the absolute truth that you are worthy of love and belonging right now. And when you belong to yourself, you become connected to yourself. Warts and all, the light, the dark, the things that you're proud of, the things that cause you shame, the things that you want everybody in the world to know about you, and the things that you don't want anybody to know, and the things that you're trying to forget about yourself and edit and hustle. All of that is you. All of that right now is worthy of love and belonging. That quote by Dr. Maya Angelou is at once absolutely inspiring, but it's also a point where it's a decision point. It's a call. It's a call forward to do belonging, to start belonging to ourselves, to start belonging to yourself. Because when we belong to ourselves and we're connected to ourself, everything that we do that connects with the other two pillars, those who are most important to us and our communities, becomes genuine. It becomes authentic. It becomes real. And that's certainly been my experience. When I feel lonely, when I feel disconnected, I remind myself, eventually I remind myself, sometimes it's an uncomfortable few days, but I remind myself that I am worthy of love and belonging right now, including loving myself and proudly belonging to myself. Those things that I'm proud of, those things that I, am ashamed of in myself, all of that still is worthy of love and belonging. And I don't have to hustle anymore. I don't have to hustle for belonging, to belong. I don't have to hustle to be seen. I don't have to hustle to be heard. I don't have to hustle that I belong. So, my friend, are you hustling right now to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel that you belong? What does that hustle look like? And finally, do you truly belong to yourself? This is a fantastic conversation. This is actually really hard, I'm going to say. And I want to say thank you so much for sticking through the conversation, sitting with me over this coffee, because this is a tough conversation. It is at once inspiring and absolutely soul nourishing. But on the other hand, it actually requires us to confront some pretty challenging aspects of ourselves and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to everyone around us, and can go to the core, absolute core of our source of loneliness. Remember, loneliness is something, is an emotion that we all feel as humans from time to time. And the beauty of loneliness is that we don't go through loneliness alone. And indeed, the path to authentic connection starts when we realize that we're lonely and start to do things to work back towards who we are and belong to ourselves. I'm building a fantastic team of coaches, connection experts, and therapists, all here to help you work through your loneliness. And indeed, I'm here through the blog and the podcast, and through an exclusive Facebook group where premium members of the Loneliness Guy can come and get support and give support to other gay men experiencing loneliness. So if you want to know more about that, there's a link in the episode description. And for $9.95 Australian dollars a month, you can come and join that group and be part of the little community on a corner of Facebook that's working to put themselves into the world just a little bit each day. Thank you so much for joining me for this coffee today. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe, stay well, and know that you are worthy just as you are, worthy of love and belonging, just as you are right now. Much love to you all. See you next time.